Hello and welcome into the Cubs on Deck podcast, episode number 118. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss, and today I am joined by my co-host, Brian Smith. Brian, how's it going, buddy?
It's going good. We had a Moises Ballesteros home run to Anthony Rizzo in the bleachers. It's one of those things I still can't believe actually happened.
That was actually one of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen. Like I was watching that. Were you at the game?
No,
No?
I had to not go.
Okay. I was watching on TV, and when he made contact with that ball, I was like, oh, that's out.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh wait, like Anthony Rizzo is in that general area. And then it got closer and closer. I was like, oh my god, it's the Anthony. That was unbelievable. I was sitting watching with my wife and her parents, and I was like going crazy in the living room watching that happen. It was awesome on all counts, right? Like on Mo's first career home run, on Rizzo already being in the stands, to the home run going to Rizzo. Like everything was so cool about that.
Yeah, it's like the most baseball thing that ever baseballed.
That's true, man. I watching all the Anthony Rizzo stuff, like it's so cool because like watching, like I was at the time when Anthony Rizzo was coming up to the majors. Like that was right before I like started like digging in deep into the Cubs system. Like it was closer
Yeah.
to like it was my where I marked my like date when I really started paying attention. It was like the Albert Almora draft is when I like really started digging in deep into the Cubs farm system. And so like Rizzo coming up was a little bit prior to that, obviously, but like to see a guy who I remember coming up to the Cubs major league team from their farm system, kind of right from Iowa, and now be an ambassador for the team is like such a cool like full moment there. And it makes me think about the Cubs farm system now. And like, oh, are there any guys that are going to be like that in the future? Like, no, probably not a Cubs Hall of Famer, right? But still really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, he was a good example of why paying attention to the minors sometimes sort of, I don't know, helps you root for someone early where, if you just looked at Rizzo's stats in San Diego, you would have thought, why in God's name would they trade for this guy? And there was a lot more under the hood, and especially if you knew his story and everything he'd overcome to get to the majors.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just a great career. I guess we start the podcast by just saying cheers to him.
Yeah, my favorite Chicago Cub of all time is Anthony Rizzo.
My son's first favorite athlete, which is
That's cool.
that's a very specific thing that's special for sure.
That's cool. Well, actually, so today on the episode, we're getting into some season recaps. But since we're talking about the major league team a little bit with Anthony Rizzo, it makes me think about Nico Horner and what he's doing in Chicago this year. Like he is, in some ways, like the closest thing the Cubs have to Anthony Rizzo, where like he just seems like the lifeblood of the Chicago Cubs team, like in the same way that Anthony Rizzo. Even if Rizzo was, I don't know if he was ever the best player on a Chicago Cubs team at one time. Maybe 2014 he probably was.
Yeah,
But like
probably.
I don't associate like Anthony Rizzo with like the best player, but like he was the Chicago Cubs. Nico Horner is that way a little bit. And we watched like I've podcasted since Nico Horner was drafted. And so like that's
Mm-hmm.
fun watching Nico do that now. And I don't know, just a little bit of reminiscing on Prospectum as we're also reminiscing on their time with the Cubs major league team, which is kind of fun. So, all right, man, we got 3 season recaps to hit today. Last week, we talked about the South Bend Cubs because their season had already wrapped up. So we gave them the treatment of handing out an MVP, a Cy Young, and a most improved player. Talked about several guys for each category last week. So if you want to check out the South Bend version of the season wrap up, you can go check out that episode from last week. This week, we're covering Myrtle Beach, who Myrtle Beach did wrap up their season. They played in the playoffs this past week, and lost in a 3-game set. Got swept out of a 3-game set to the Charleston River Dogs. So their season is complete. And then Knoxville finished their regular season as well this past week. Their season is done. Iowa is not done yet. So we are going to recap their season. We're going to wrap up their season, but they still have this week left of games. So if you're looking to go catch some Cubs minor league action on MILB TV, that is your place to do it, is Iowa this week. They still have games to go, but we're going to be back in your ears next week with the award show. And so to wrap up with the award show, I wanted to kind of make sure we hit on these season recaps for each of these levels. So today we're going to go Myrtle Beach, Knoxville, Iowa, line by line, to talk about the players that really stood out at each affiliate. So you want to start off with the Myrtle Beach Pelicans?
Sure, yeah. Pelicans had an interesting season where they were really bad early on and then really amazing after the break. Um, Sort of filled with guys that followed that same trajectory, guys that struggled unbelievably early on and then came around and had really fantastic second halves. You could basically choose, I don't know, 3 or 4 MVPs that almost have the exact same narrative of their season. Um, I think just based on sort of the position that he plays carrying the most value, I'm going to go with Angel Cepeda as my team MVP for the Pelicans. But, if you want Matt Hallback, if you want Alexi Limpoy, I'm there to hear that too.
Yeah, Cepeda is also my MVP of the Pelicans. I looked at Cepeda and Matt Hallback, looked at their numbers side by side, and like they're incredibly similar. Like
Really similar, yeah.
their slash lines are nearly identical. Hallback or Cepeda has them beat by 5 batting average points. Hallback has Cepeda beat by 10 OBP points and 4 slugging. Kind of wild that Matt Hallback only has a 4 points extra slugging than Angel Cepeda, which is super fun. So very, very similar slash line. Cepeda striking out quite a bit more, 32% compared to Matt Hallback's 21. Similar walk rates. The thing that stands out to me with Cepeda, like you mentioned, is the positional value, playing a lot of shortstop this season, but also he stole 27 bags. That's a lot of value that he's bringing on the base
Mm-hmm.
paths that Matt Hallback did not bring. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that I'd have, as of right now, Cepeda ranked as a higher prospect on my prospect rankings than Matt Hallback. But like those are the two guys. Like you mentioned, Lumpoy and some other guys as well that have a real argument for MVP here. But I'm gonna give it to Cepeda with like a real tight honorable mention going to Matt Hallback. I looked at Matt Hallback's season, dude. Like he played in 103 games this year, and I think that was like the sneakiest 103 games of any prospect this year, because it seemed like he was out for longer than he was, and he was kind of quiet when he came back, and all of a sudden he turned it on that second half. Like 103 games is obviously not a full season, but that's a really decent chunk of games for a guy that didn't seem like he played that much.
Yeah, and of those college draftees, we were paying so much attention to Cole Mathis early, then Cameron Cisneros goes on his hot streak, and then Kane Kepley arrives in the second half. And so there was never really a time where, like, when you think about sort of the old college guy on the team, the first thought was Hallback. So I think that goes to sort of making it fly under the radar. With Cepeda, one thing I'd say that's really interesting in the numbers is he only had 8 errors at shortstop in 61 games. He had 19 total errors. He had more errors at third base in less than half of the games that he played at shortstop. 61 games at shortstop, 28 games at third base, more errors at third. Interesting split there. One thing I'd say about Cepeda is if you watch those broadcasts, the announcing team really like hyped up what a good dude he was behind the scenes. I think if you see pitching changes and pitcher meetings on the mound there, he would often come to the mound, I think, to whether it be help translate or just be another voice in that circle. And seems like a fantastic dude and really mature for 19 years old.
Yeah, and also I believe I got a comment back. I think me and Zumak got a comment back. I believe that or from Rich Biesterfeld, that he does pronounce it Angel Cepeda, not
Okay,
Angel
I'm
Cepeda.
gonna have to get that through my head.
Yeah, no, I not to call you out on. I mean, because names is something we struggle with. I try to
Yeah,
get it right. Like we both try to get it right on this show, but it's really difficult too, because
yeah,
a lot of times we listen to the minor league broadcast and Luke Bailey's getting it right a lot of, like, all the time. But then you listen to the visiting broadcast and sometimes they don't get it right because they're not their players. Difficult thing. But yeah, I
yeah.
believe that Rich said that it's Angel Cepeda. So just to note for future reference. But man, it's was it? Didn't you say that you wanted to kind of? This is not for this episode, but kind of wanted to compare and contrast Cepeda and was it Jefferson Rojas? Is that what you were
And
talking about?
Christian Hernandez,
And
I
Christian
think,
Hernandez,
as the
yeah.
guy, as the sort of next shortstop after Rojas in the system.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's that'll probably be a good off-season episode. I think
Yeah.
is to compare and contrast those guys. Maybe it's after a Rule 5 decision is made on Christian Hernandez, and then we'll tackle that one. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean I think you're talking at two top 15-ish prospects in the Cubs organization.
For sure.
Both those guys are like flirting with top 10, but that gets a little dicey when you're talking about that. So yeah, that might be worth a conversation at some point here. What about Cy Young? I've got a couple names circled here. I want to hear your thoughts. Who's your pick for Cy Young of the Myrtle Beach Pelicans season?
Yeah. For me, it also comes down to two guys that had really similar stat lines, but just because of sort of how consistently dominant he was, I gotta go with Jaxon Florentino, who was just awesome. 1.96 ERA, only 11 games pitched, but got to 59 innings, or no,
Yeah.
got to 59 innings in Myrtle Beach, 81 total innings. Got to 6 innings pitched, I want to say 5 times this year, which for a 20-year-old in this system is not something we've seen at all, but he pitches really efficiently, fills up the strike zone, dominated at times, but not afraid to also sort of pitch to contact and doesn't allow any hits. He'd be my pick.
Yeah, so Jaxon Florentino is also my pick. We're on the same page so far. Ethan Flanagan is that second guy. I'm sure that was the second guy for you as well. You're right. They're not the slash line. The stat lines for these two guys are wildly similar. 59 and 2/3 innings for Florentino, 56 for Flanagan. Those are numbers in Myrtle Beach. You mentioned the ERA for Florentino is 1.96. For Flanagan, it's actually 1.93, which crazy that they can be that close. 1.04 whip for Florentino, 1.16 for Flanagan. The thing that stands out and really what makes him win this award for me, if we're looking at stats for Florentino, is he struck out 10.1 batters per 9 innings, did Florentino, and walked just 3, which those numbers are both a little bit better than Flanagan. And 3 is like not a crazy high number, especially for a guy in single A, three walks per 9. But it almost felt like he was walking even fewer than that when you like watch his outings. Like it just felt like, I think part of that is like there was fewer base runners because he wasn't giving them many hits too. But like it just seemed like he was always pitching with the bases empty. And so yeah, it was a really strong. And I think part of it too is, I mean, well, we can talk about this most improved award here for Myrtle Beach up next, but part of it for me is that Florentino like really came on this. I guess both these guys came on the scene crazy. Like with Florentino, I hadn't thought hardly at all about him prior to him being called up to Myrtle Beach. And Flanagan, it was a guy who was drafted a few years ago. And for him to come back from injury and really put his name back on the map, a little bit older, obviously, than Florentino. But both those guys were not pitchers that we had circled as being dominant out of the Myrtle Beach rotation this season when we did our season preview. I bet we didn't even mention either one of these names when we did our season preview.
Yeah, I'd be curious I'm gonna have to go back and listen to our spring training episode because I was lucky to just run into Florentino one day on the backfields, and I can't remember if I mentioned him on the pod. I know that I put something in the Discord about it and might have even tweeted something about it. But yeah, just one of those times where I ran into somebody who was like pretty impressive. The slider definitely when you're standing behind home plate there, like you get a real appreciation for that pitch and just being sort of a low slot. That fastball sort of plays up above its number. He jumped out a little in spring training. I can't say that I saw like anything like this season happening, and especially as a starter, like to me when I saw him, I was like, oh, like that's a guy that'll be a fun reliever when he sort of grows up and adds muscle. And so for him to succeed so much as a starter this year, he's got a really just good understanding of his mechanics that are not super traditional.
I'd imagine that Jaxon Florentino is up there for the biggest discrepancy in terms of how he's viewed as a prospect for people that watch him live with no radar
Mm-hmm.
gun
Yeah.
versus people that watch him on MILB TV with a radar gun.
Sure.
Because the fastball does play up, and like if you're watching live, if you're watching in person, and you see guys constantly behind that fastball, you're like, oh, he must be popping it at 94 miles an hour. Well, he's not popping 94 miles an hour, and
Right.
the sliders like it's if you're watching him live without the radar gun, you're like, wow, this guy is incredible, and he had an incredible season.
Yeah.
But it probably looks even more impressive live in person.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's a fun 75-mile-per-hour slider that sweeps about a foot and a half. It's just a
Yeah.
weird, cool pitch.
All right, most improved for the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. I'll lead off with this one,
Yeah.
and I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit because I'm not going to identify a single player. Honestly, it's this was such a unique, like you led off with this, right? Like you led off as like such
Yeah.
a unique season, such a unique team where like the team was bad in the first half, and then the team was great in the second half. And we've talked about how like the wins and losses don't always match up with the prospects and how the individual prospects are playing and all that good stuff. This season, it 100% did. Like when they were having a bad season in the first half, I don't think
Mm-hmm.
we thought super highly of many of the prospects that were there. And then
Right.
the second half rolled around, and they put together a Milwaukee Brewers esque type of run. And we were looking across the board at their entire lineup and their rotation and some bullpen guys, and we're like, "Holy cow, these guys are really standing out in a big way." You could go down the line, like in terms of most improved. If you're viewing it from the standpoint of like, am I higher on them now than I was at the beginning of the season? Maybe not even the beginning of the season, but like part of the way through that first part of the season, there's like 12 dudes, man. Like Cepeda, Alexi Lumpoy, Matt Hallback, like we mentioned. Leo Espinoza spent a lot of the season in Myrtle Beach. He could fit that category. So could Christian Olivo. Owen Ayers, maybe if I was to define one player here, if I was to pick one guy, Owen Ayers might be my most improved. And not that he had a really bad first half, because he actually doesn't fit that category where he actually did have a strong first half and then got injured in the second half. I
Right.
just think that
Right.
I am higher on him in terms of like ranking him as a prospect than I was prior to the season starting. So I guess I'll go Owen Ayers. But like I said, if you wanted to go the two starting pitchers we talked about, if you want to go Yenry Rojas as well, LMG spent
Mm-hmm.
a lot of time this season in Myrtle Beach. Dom Hamley, if you want to go the bullpen route, was really impressive throughout
Yeah.
the season as well. So like just a whole host of names, in my opinion, that you can go with. But I'll go with the name that kind of contrasts with everybody else, and I'll go with Owen Ayers here.
Holy cow! I think Alexi Lumpoy is like the most slam dunk pick of any award that we'll ever
Really?
give out. Yeah, no, I mean
Okay.
for two reasons. I think he fits. I think he fits any definition you have of this award. In one sense,
That's
if you
true.
want to go with a guy that wasn't on our radar last offseason that's now on a prospect list, that's your guy. If you want to go with a guy that showed up to spring training, like made a name for himself, like jumped up a level, that's your guy. And then, how about this? 200 plate appearances into the season, June 21st. Limpoy is hitting 144 is his batting average with a 230 on base and a 250 slugging. One of the worst offensive performances that I like ever remember
Yeah.
getting 50 games starting. And then the rest of the way, he goes 262, 343, 452, so 796 OPS in a league that getting over 700 is a dream. Has multiple games that are sort of the highlight among the highlights of the Pelicans season, and sort of puts himself back in the conversation for being a top 20 prospect in the system again. Just a wild, like, I don't know, like meteor rise, then fall into the depths of the ocean, and then come back.
Yeah.
It was wild. It was a
I do.
wild season, and credit to him for that. Can become a lost season so quick when you're hitting 144 on June 21st, and
Yeah.
it doesn't go at all as a lost season now.
That's a great point. I'm thinking back to, was it Kansler's comments in an interview during spring training when he called out
It
he
was
I think it was Kansler, right? Or
yeah, it
no?
might have been.
Let's say it was Kansler. It was someone in the front office's comments in an interview on Man, I think it was Pipeline. I think it was a Pipeline interview, MLB Pipeline, and they called out, and he goes, yeah, Alexi Limpoy is a guy that I've really got my eye on, and I think that all of us were like, what? Because it was a Pipeline article, so a lot of people that weren't super prospect nerds were reading that and saying
Yeah.
they were tweeting at us, and they were saying, who
Who?
the hell is Alexi Limpoy? And I had to
No.
say, I have no idea. I have no idea who Alexi Limpoy is, and because he skipped obviously going from the DSL all the way to Myrtle Beach, and yeah, man, I Alexi Limpoy, wild season, and you're right, to be 50 games into the season and really struggling in your first taste of stateside baseball has to be incredibly defeating from
Hmm.
the from a human perspective.
Yeah.
And to bounce back is nothing short of amazing. Like that's what it takes baseball wise, and like in between the ears wise is just off the charts. So shout out to Alexi Limpoy. I love that.
Yep.
Anybody else you want to call out before we move on to Knoxville?
Um, he's one of the exercises, or this exercise doesn't really lead to us talking about guys that split their season like
Mhm.
dead in half, and so I'd have to mention my dude Luis Martinez Gomez as just as an awesome season that he had. I mean, 1.46 ERA across the season. 0.52 when he gets to South Bend, but was like holding it down in Myrtle Beach. He walked the world in Myrtle Beach, but never gave up runs. It never came back to hurt him, and he just had an awesome season, like we kind of expected him to on this podcast. Honestly,
Yeah. I talked about LMG and those weird looking splits between Myrtle and
yeah,
South Bend on last week's episode. So if you guys want to hear some more conversation about that, go check out last week's. Uh, I'm sure that we'll probably talk a little bit more about LMG next week, because we will be handing out a reliever of the year award.
yeah,
So
be
he
in
may
that
get some
discussion.
love
Yeah,
there. So
good point.
if you're gonna get some LMG conversation on 3 straight episodes, which is Brian's dream. So let's go ahead and transition up to the first season of the AA Knoxville Smokies. We got the
Mm-hmm.
Smokies back, and kind of a weird season overall for the Smokies, right? Kind of a weird lineup that they trotted out there every day. There were a lot of guys that were significantly older than league average, both on the hitting side of things and the pitching side of things. Strange season, but you also got performance. You also got to see some of the top prospects in the system there. You got to see Jaxon Wiggins. You got to see Jefferson Rojas for a short amount of time. Kind of an interesting season for the Smokies. You want to lead off with some MVP discussion here?
Yeah, I think another example where we're probably going to be split between two guys. I think there's a good case for both of them. I think you might go the other direction, so I'm gonna go BJ Murray, who had an awesome bounce back season. Got to 20 homers and 20 steals. A little 2020 season for
Yeah.
BJ is pretty
Yep.
sweet. Um, and he's really interesting to me. He's 20. This was his age 25 season, so he's old, but not insanely old. Like especially coming sort of post COVID, those average ages get boosted for a couple years, and he's still going to be with the team for 2 more seasons. He's under team control, and I think there's no doubt now you got that he spends next year in Iowa. I'm just very interested to see how it goes. I'm really interested to see how big of a role they create for him in Iowa, how much playing time he gets at different positions, because I think you could make a case. Like, I can make a BJ Murray top 30 prospect case still. And I can certainly make a case that he could help the major league team with certain injuries happening next year. And so I do hope that he gets, I mean, Chase Strumpf had a relatively good sized role with Iowa next year. I hope BJ Murray has an even bigger role with Iowa next year.
I could see him taking that Chase Strumpf role, like
Yeah.
that exact role. I could see that happening. BJ Murray is actually also my pick. I assume that second guy you were talking about is Pedro Ramirez.
Pedro.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had BJ Murray, honestly. So I'm sitting here. I had BJ Murray pulled up and queued up and ready to roll, and I had right in my notes here. I had written down mention the 2020 season, and you beat me to it. I thought I was going to pull out that BJ Murray having 20 stolen base. BJ Murray had 20 stolen bases, dude. That's
Yeah.
crazy. that's wild. 2020 from BJ Murray is terrific. He played a lot of games this year, which
Mm-hmm.
is definitely a perk of him being sent back down to Double A, is that he got a lot of action. Obviously, you would have rather seen him in Iowa, but getting 125 games in Double A that's a lot of baseball games. He posted a 118 OPS plus. Like, it was impossible to hit in the Southern League this year, just impossible. And so he did great as far as that goes. 19% strikeout rate is probably what stood out the most to me of any number across the board for like he posted a 16% walk rate. We know the dude can walk. Like he's done that his entire career. That's something that he does. But to post a sub 20% strikeout rate in Knoxville is super impressive, super fun.
I mean, it is wild. He cut his strikeout rate, raised his walk rate, hit for the most power he ever has, stole the most bases he ever has. Like, that's all you can ask for a guy that got challenged with an assignment that probably disappointed him. He went to work and answered the bell, and a spot never really opened up in Iowa for him. I'm sure that was frustrating as can be, but it will now.
I want to hear your thoughts on Pedro, because really I saw this as BJ Murray running away with this
Did
team
you?
MVP award. So I want to hear your thoughts on Pedro.
I thought there were large parts of this season. Like, I think if you thought about the Knoxville MVP on a month by month basis, I wonder if Pedro wins more months than BJ does.
Yeah.
I think there were just times where he was by far the best player on the team when especially when they were not going well, when they were running into really good pitchers on other teams. He's sort of the one that is least overwhelmed by good pitching, I think, on that team, and had some just dynamo stretches, and to do it, without much Double A experience, and to do it in this season where hitters didn't do anything, he was super impressive, and he bounces between positions. I think he went a month without making an error at one point. Just a real sort of professional baseball player.
So when I do my prospect rankings every offseason and every midseason, I like start from scratch. I don't take what I did previously in the
Mm-hmm.
year and then tinker and edit. Like, I just
Yeah.
restart. And I think that's really important to like kind of reframe how I'm thinking about these players. And part of the reason why I bring that up is because I'm thinking about BJ Murray Jr. and Pedro Ramirez, right? And Pedro, I have pretty consistently over the past 3-4 prospect lists that I've done had Pedro as a top 20 prospect in the Cubs system. BJ Murray, I have not had as a top 30 prospect in the Cubs system for quite some time now. And when I'm thinking about those two players, like, they're not really all that far off from each other as like prospects. Because
Mm-hmm.
like you said, like obviously Pedro is significantly younger, right? I think he's 4 years younger than
Years,
BJ
yeah.
Murray is. And so that makes a difference when you're viewing them as prospects. But like when you say that you can see a scenario where BJ Murray helps contribute to the Chicago Cubs' success next year or the year after, who's to say that value isn't that much less or more or whatever than what Pedro Ramirez could potentially impact Chicago?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't think those players are all that far off, even though if you look at prospect rankings, they're probably separated by 20 or 30 slots, and they
Yeah.
probably shouldn't be.
Well, once you start getting to the players that are most likely bench guys, it just becomes that little bit of distinction of, does a guy have a decent chance at becoming an everyday player, which, then his value goes exponential. And I think that Pedro, probably has more of a chance to just run into a season where he hits, 285 in the big leagues, and plays 500 plate appearances at second base, where with Murray, it's pretty hard to imagine still that he has like a full-time role ever in the majors, but um he just seems like the most perfect bench player you could ever ask for. But they both do. I mean, those are two guys that I think the Cubs will be really, they'll feel really comfortable with having them in Iowa,
Yes.
and most likely off the 40-man roster,
Yep.
just as guys that are real sort of deep depth, but that wouldn't be overwhelmed if their numbers got called.
I mean, you mentioned Chase Trump, and things got different for him over the past couple of years, obviously. But like where you kind of viewed Chase Strumpf as like, all right, if you're four guys deep at third base because of injuries, then like you
Yeah.
call up Chase Strumpf and like
Yeah.
he may run into one every once in a while in the majors. And I think you kind of view BJ Murray as that to a certain degree, where it's maybe he's like the third guy deep at third
Right.
base or at first base or whatever. Maybe a little bit more than that, but like you're okay if it falls with that, and he won't look completely overmatched in the major leagues. So
Yeah, it's that plate appearance difference where, you know, if Strumpf gets to the majors, you just know that the strikeouts are going to be a huge issue,
yeah,
and you're just hoping that he does find that fastball to hit
yeah,
over.
yeah,
You know, Murray and Ramirez are two guys that if they get to the majors, they're going to give a good at bat. And, you know, they'll probably get overwhelmed for a while too, but there'll be a little more balls in play that might find a hole.
So the Cy Young for the
Yeah.
Smokies, I think, comes down between two dudes, in my opinion, and it's a matter of how much do you value volume in
Hmm.
Knoxville. Which guy are you going with here?
I am going to go with Jaxon Wiggins.
Okay, yeah, fair.
I think it's a ridiculous choice, but I have to do it just because it was such a dominating time with Knoxville, and I do think that I don't know there's a certain energy around when a top prospect is sort of not only on your team but dominating like every time out. I think it gives energy to a team and a fan base and like the announcing crew. Like, you know, I know when those guys were broadcasting Jaxon games, it just felt, you know, it sounded to me like it was more of an event for them, and
Yeah,
I think that just permeates its way all through the team. Grant Kipp, it was sort of his award to lose for most of the season, and he fell off, I think, just enough that Jaxon coming back and looking and having such a fun little finish there. I'm just gonna give it to him because it was such an awesome season where Jaxon just got so much better from last year. It's really, really sort of hard to describe how much better at the art of pitching he is than last year.
yeah, he's freaking good, man. We will definitely
Yeah,
be talking about Jaxon Wiggins more next
yeah,
week, for sure. If there's any award that you want to put some odds on, I bet it would be Jaxon Wiggins for pitcher of the year. Yeah, dude. Actually, I'll say it's actually probably a three-horse race with varying levels of innings pitched. You got Jaxon Wiggins, who this year in Knoxville threw 42 innings. Let's step up a little bit, and then you got Antonio Santos, who logged 76 and a third innings, and then you step up another level, and you got Grant Kipp, who logged 108 and two-thirds innings. And so,
in a
like,
fair world where we don't consider ages and prospect status, Antonio Santos is sort of easily the pitcher of the year on this team, right? He's 2.12 ERA and 76 innings, just insanely dominant. But, you know, we're also here to sort of mention the guys that are most fun to mention sometimes.
yeah, I was gonna say Antonio Santos earned the Cy Young Award here. I'll go Jaxon Wiggins as well
Yeah.
because although he did spend, I mean, obviously he spent time at three different levels in the Cubs minor league system and a good decent chunk both in South Bend and Knoxville, I guess. I guess actually it was probably significantly more in Knoxville than South Bend, I guess. Uh, but it feels weird not to hand out a team specific Cy Young award to Jaxon Wiggins, so I'll give it to him. Struck out more than 11 batters per 9 innings, sub one WHIP, sub two ERA. Uh, honestly just dominant during his time in
Dominant.
Knoxville to the point where like that's why he got called up to Iowa at the end of the year. You've talked about it so many times, and I love that you do that. Like you get to a point where the dude's just throwing a fastball right down the heart of the plate
Yeah.
and getting away with it, and it's like you can't let him get away with this. You gotta bump him to a level where you can't do that anymore. And we saw that with Cade Horton, right? We saw that he kept doing things that he shouldn't have been doing at the lower levels, and he kept getting
Hmm.
bumped up, and now he's doing that at the major league level. So maybe Cade Horton gets promoted to a new level besides the majors. But
Honestly, we kind of need to talk about the fact that like what we told Cade Horton to stop doing, he's still doing in the majors, and they still can't really hit it. It's freaking wild. I mean,
it's
he
fascinating.
still throws a lot of fastballs down the middle,
He does.
and it's working out. So
He kind of leaves a lot of sliders up in the zone too. This
yeah,
kid,
yeah.
he's doing what he did in Myrtle Beach. He's just
I
doing
mean,
it.
one thing I don't think is like talked about that much that among Cub fans is Cade Horton has had a pretty bad year throwing his slider. Like
Yeah,
it is way
agreed.
worse than it was in the minor leagues, in the
The
majors.
changeup
Like
is very clearly his like go-to off speed. Like
totally.
it's very good. But in the minors, we were like, oh yeah, like the changeups are okay. Okay, it's like it's progressing. And then we were talking about the
Right.
slider because the slider was the pitch and the changeup didn't matter as much. And now it's completely
But
flipped.
I really believe that he's gonna come back
Yeah.
next year and the slider is gonna be back. And now that's when we talk about a guy who then sees a strikeout rate bump and what he's
Yes.
doing ERA wise, sort of overperforming what the peripherals suggest. It's not that we're going to see an ERA regression necessarily. We're going to see a stuff acceleration to match that ERA,
Yeah.
I think.
We are as crazy of a season as he's having right now. We are not seeing the best Cade Horton right now, which
Totally.
is so fun. Okay,
Yeah.
that was our Cade Horton tangent.
Yeah.
Let's talk about most improved player in Knoxville because I think I'll say Jaxon Wiggins is my Cy Young, so I can give the most
Mm-hmm.
improved to Grant Kipp. And I think
Okay.
if I gave Grant Kipp the Cy Young, I'd pick Jaxon Wiggins as my most improved. I think two very different reasons, right? I think for me, Jaxon Wiggins went from already being a top 10 prospect in the Cubs organization to now he is like without a doubt the best pitching prospect in the Cubs organization. He is a tremendous player. Like he just went from being good to being phenomenal, and that's a huge
Mm-hmm.
jump for me. And then Grant Kipp on the other side of things is um, he stood out almost immediately the first four starts of this season, where I think that if we were going to go super, super deep cuts before the season started, I would have been like, oh, yeah, Grant Kipp, keep an eye on him. But like, I only like partially meant it. And now like, I truly mean it when I say like, keep an eye on Grant Kipp. I know things kind of leveled off a little bit as the season went on for him, but I still think that like the swing and miss is pretty impressive from him. I do like the slider quite a bit. Like there's something there that stands out for Grant Kipp more so than the past couple seasons from him. And so, um, those are my two like co-awards
Yeah.
for Cy Young and Most Improved.
I'm gonna go with Tyler Schlafer as my most improved for Knoxville.
Yeah,
I
nice.
know he pitched more of the season with South Bend than he did Knoxville, but he pitched better with Knoxville. I think the fact that he succeeded so much with Knoxville is what sort of makes us take everything he did seriously. It was May 28th. He threw 8 1-hit innings for South Bend, and then he really just never let off the gas pedal up until his season ended a little early. He went on the injured list. Can't say I know necessarily why. Hope everything's good with him. In Double A, never allowed more than 3 runs in a start. Had some had I what is that 5 6 quality starts essentially with Knoxville, and like most improved. His knuckle curveball that he throws is a really good pitch that I think I sort of remember him throwing a curveball before all his injuries hit, but it was nothing special. And the slider was more of what he threw back then.
And
His
changeup.
curveball, his changeup was always good, and it still is. But I think the curve when I watched him this year, the curveball seemed to be the pitch that made everything happen. It became another offering he could throw to lefties and outpitch against both sides of the plate. Um, and I think he's a legitimate and in throwing harder than ever too, a legitimate prospect. And wherever he ends up next year, um, I think he has a chance to keep pitching his way up the ladder. I'm excited for him. Awesome season.
Fun to say Tyler Schlafer Most Improved in the year 2025. I love that.
Yeah,
That's terrific.
yeah.
All right, let's move on. Unless you have anything else on the Double A Smokies to talk about, we can switch over to Iowa.
One thing I want to say is we've probably seen the end of Pablo Aliendo in the Cubs organization, and didn't have a particularly great season or anything, but a dude that you and I have watched play baseball a ton of times, and an incredible leader for a baseball team in the minors. Somebody who I think really raises the clubhouse this season, and just cheers to that dude. Hopefully he goes somewhere and rakes.
Don't always judge social media as reality, but one thing I do judge as reality is when teammates post like congratulations to their teammates on a promotion especially when you see them get called to the big leagues. But even from high A to double A or double A to triple A, when a guy gets promoted, every teammate's like, congrats, congrats, like shouting them out on social media. Pablo Aliendo is a guy that every teammate just seems to adore him. And it radiates to fans that go to the ballpark and see him play in person. I've had so many people reach out to me saying, hey, I went to a South Bend Cubs game. Pablo Aliendo was terrific. I went to a Knoxville game. Pablo was awesome. He came up and signed autographs. He did all these things. And it's fun to have guys in the system that you love rooting for. Obviously, it's super fun cheering on a Jaxon Wiggins 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but it's also fun rooting for a guy that everyone seems to love. And Pablo Aliendo has definitely been that guy over the course of his very long tenure with the Cubs.
Yeah.
Okay. We're starting off with Iowa here, we're into the deal with Iowa here. I just noticed now that I am currently wearing a Toledo Mud Hens shirt, which is, I forgot to take this off and change into a obvious shirt before the episode. We'll maybe blur my entire chest out of the YouTube so that you don't have to see this while we're talking about their rival, the Iowa Cubs. But MVP seems like a 3-horse race, and it's probably we'll touch on it here, obviously, but I think we'll talk even more about it on next week's show when we talk about Hitter of the Year award. Who do you like for the Iowa Cubs MVP?
Yeah, I mean, you and I about a month ago talked about that it was a Jonathan Long, Owen Casey race for Player of the Year. Obviously, those guys are going to be in this discussion too. When we talk about Player of the Year next week, I'm gonna make it more sort of more about maybe the advanced statistics and stuff. But when I think about the player that's the team MVP, Jonny Long had 90 RBIs, beats Casey's number by 35, had 86 runs scored, easily leading the team, leads the team in hits. He was the guy that was just there, and he was doing it so consistently for the whole season. So for me, Jonny Long was the MVP of the Iowa Cubs. Whether or not that means more for more hardware, we'll have to debate at a later time. But I think he's pretty clearly the MVP of this team.
He was in the lineup almost every single day. 136 games as of right now, still a week to go. He set the franchise record for most consecutive games on base. He had a sub 20% strikeout rate. He still popped 20 home runs this year, which is still impressive. Everything he did was amazing. He's my pick for MVP as well.
Still obviously super weird. He only played 15 games in the field, not at first base.
Yeah.
Don't understand how the team decided to have that continue to be the case when he was playing so well. Wouldn't you want to explore to see if he can help the major league team at some other spot? I don't get that at all.
It is so perplexing to me. I do not understand it. That actually, maybe if I got to sit down and ask whoever, someone in the front office a question, that would maybe be my number one question, because I just don't get it. Like, there so much value is gained by him being able to play a slightly below average third base or left field. Yeah. Like, he doesn't have to be an average defender over there. He just needs to be able to play over there in the majors.
I mean, honestly, just like if something like really bad had happened to Ian Happ or something, like, you would have wanted to know, you would have wanted to have the analysis of like what it looks like for him out there ready. They were a little fortunate that something like that didn't happen and that it didn't matter. We'll have to see if they change their mind next year, or if it's a pure first base from now on.
I want to be clear that I'm framing that as a positive, and like that I think his bat is so good that I wish they would have done that for. Like, it's not a negative of like, oh, like, he can't do it, he can't play left, he can't play third. It's more like, the bat's good, guys. Let's see how else we can get him in the majors. And so great season from Jonny Long. Ballesteros, obviously tremendous as well. Ballesteros had a 13% strikeout rate this season in Iowa, which is a crazy low number that stood out. Owen Casey had a 551 slug that stood out. I do want to give, because he will not get love in our hitter of the year next week, I want to give some, and he's also not a prospect, I want to give some love to Carlos Perez, because Jason Kempf came on the show a few weeks ago and gave Carlos Perez his flowers, and they're well deserved. But I want to run through these numbers for him because he's a 34-year-old catcher. His prospect days are long behind him. But I posted the other day on social media that obviously Reese McGuire has done an incredible job in coming up from Iowa when Miguel Amaya went down and being just a tremendous backup catcher in Chicago. Like everything you want in a backup catcher, he's been that. I think that Carlos Perez could have done the exact same thing if given the opportunities. This year, in 106 games for Carlos Perez, he's slashing 292 with a 378 OBP and a 590 slug. He's 590 slug because he has 27 home runs, 31 doubles in 106 games, which is crazy. 17% strikeout rate, 11% walk rate. The OPS plus is 129. The top OPS plus in the entire Cubs farm system. Just an outrageous season from Carlos Perez. And like I said, he's not MVP because he's not a prospect here. You won't get the hitter of the year love, but needs to be called out as much as you can be called out on a Cubs prospect podcast.
Under or over, there is a 1% chance Carlos Perez is on the wild card roster.
Under. I think under 1%. Do you think it's over?
I mean, it's an injury and Miguel Amaya not making it back in time. If there's an injury to Kelly or McGuire and Amaya's not ready, it will be him.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll roll with Ballesteros as pure number 2 catcher. I think they would keep him on as the third, but whether or not that's 1%, I don't know. But
there is a 0% chance that Moises Ballesteros is catching a playoff game. So yeah. So then that the percentage is higher that Carlos Perez is on the roster than Moises Ballesteros catching a playoff game. All right, man. We just covered MVP. Cy Young Award for the Iowa Cubs is
turned into a runaway, right?
I don't know.
No?
You think it's Noland?
I think Connor Nolan did the thing. I just don't see another. There's not another contender obvious and clear enough to sort of unseat him to me.
I'll throw somebody else in the mix.
Okay.
My Cy Young is also Connor Nolan. Like Connor Nolan logged the most innings in the Cubs farm system this year, 127 innings, all in Iowa, a sub-4 ERA in a league that it's hard. The offenses in the ballpark, offenses are crazier than any other in the farm system. Strikeout rate pushing 8%, or sorry, 8 walks or 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. I'll get it out eventually here. 3.6 walks per 9 innings. Really good season across the board. It was kind of like it was more hit or miss on a daily basis from Connor Nolan than in past seasons, right? Like he'd come out some games and he'd just absolutely dominate. He'd come out some games and he'd get throttled a little bit. And so it was kind of a more hit or miss.
The domination, though, is what stuck out to me, too. That's what I had. I mean, 6. He had 11 outings where he allowed 1 run or less in AAA. Okay. I mean, there was some real dominance there. And, really just impressive for a guy to just sort of do exactly what's asked for him. He didn't miss much time. He pitched into the 6th more often than not, I think, probably this year. And it's not anything that he did on the field that isn't opening these major league opportunities. Like he's doing everything that has to happen. The stuff is just a little short of it. The ambitions for this team are a little higher than his stuff, but he's doing what he has to sort of continue to keep his name radar adjacent. I don't necessarily think he's on the radar, but he's at least like keeping his name in discussions.
He just posts, right? Like he's a guy who just posts. And we are a big Connor Nolan podcast here for sure. The other name I'll throw into the mix, and to be clear, like Connor Nolan is my Cy Young here. Mm-hmm. But I would listen to a case made for Jordan Wicks. Actually, I know again not a prospect, but I'd rather have a conversation about Jordan Wicks as a part of these awards here than Carlos Perez maybe. Still, he was a Cubs prospect at some point, but. Jordan Wicks, 68 innings during his time at Iowa, 3.31 ERA. But for me, what stood out with Jordan Wicks was that the strikeouts seemed to go up a tick. He struck out almost 10 batters per 9. The walks were down under 3. He was dealing with one heck of a scenario where he was up and down from Chicago to Iowa all the time. He was pitching out of the bullpen in Chicago and then back out of the rotation in Iowa and then piggybacking in Iowa, then bullpen in Iowa. Like he was just he posted really good numbers in Iowa despite everything else besides being on the mound going against them. And
Yeah.
that was pretty impressive to me. So I think that Jordan Wicks is probably my number 2 here for this award.
Number 2 for me is Riley Martin.
Yeah,
Riley went 2 months and 4 days, 18 outings without allowing a run. One of the more dominant stretches that we've seen a Cubs reliever at the upper levels go on. I think he was really knocking on the door of the majors. I think he was I think he was so close to getting there. I think one thing happening over maybe a 2-3 week stretch where they were really discussing his name and it would have happened for him. And he ran into one little cold stretch that probably keeps him from being like in the discussion for the Cy Young. I think it was in July. He had maybe 3 bad outings out of 6 or something, and that, for all we know, that might have kept him away from reaching the majors too. But he was really good this year, and his fastball got better. And yeah, I think he should be considered a major league option going forward, whether it's with the Cubs or somewhere else. Like that, this guy deserves a chance.
Prediction time. I don't think that Riley Martin gets added to the 40-man roster and protected from the Rule 5 draft this offseason, and I do think he gets drafted.
Okay.
I think a team will take him in the Rule 5 draft, add him to the major league roster, and be perfectly content in doing so.
The stuff will profile better on models than it did a year ago when teams didn't, and so I think he has sort of the best opportunity for it that he's had yet.
It's not just results like statistically for him for the argument that he gets drafted in the Rule 5 draft. I mean, you could make that because he was really freaking good, but it's the other stuff. It's the fastball tick up, the curveball tick up, everything looking a little bit better.
You know what's going to happen? It's going to be Tampa that selects him, and we're just going to be like, oh.
It is going to be Tampa. It's going to be Tampa. It's going to be Tampa having Hunter Biggie and Riley Martin in their bullpen and pissing us off every single day. Yeah. Well, happy for those guys, but from a Cubs fan perspective.
Right.
All right. Most improved. What you got?
Shoot, you go first. I hadn't.
Okay, so this
I have
is for
to
me,
reconsider my options here.
So this for me is kind of a similar situation as how I viewed Knoxville, where I think that I'm pretty confident in Jonny Long being my MVP, but if he was an MVP,
right,
I have a pretty argument for him being most improved, because I think that for me, I'm just going to give it to him. I'm going to give him the most improved in addition to MVP. And the reason why I say that is because obviously he had an incredibly impressive season in 2024, did Jonny Long, but there was just coming into the season, it's like there was reason to question how legitimate it was, right? Like he struggled in South Bend last year, got called up to Tennessee, and played really, really well and stood out. But it was like, how legit is this? Is half a season worth of impressive numbers enough to like really jump on the bandwagon? And like, I think we all cautiously did that. We all cautiously hopped on the bandwagon. But this was the year that he kind of just proved everybody that did right. Like he was just really impressive from the word go to the end of the season. There's a reason why he won the MVP of this team for both of us. And now, like, I have not a single problem in the world, including him as a top 10 prospect in this organization. He's earned every bit of that.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I think that's well said. I think a better podcast co-host than me would have saved his Riley Martin comments for then giving him the most improved. I wasn't organized enough to do that, but I think I would go with Riley Martin. I think I think the consistency that he had for multiple months is on a level that he just wasn't at in the previous 2 years. He could have dominant outings like he had often this year, but it was a little more. Then the next one would be shaky, and this year he really strung it together for really long stretches, and like I said, he did get better stuff as well. And so that checks enough boxes for me. I'm going to give it to him.
So there you go, Riley. You get to choose if you would rather have third place finish in Cy Young or first place finish in Most Improved. You take your pick. So, all right. Anything else you wanted to call out here for Iowa before we wrap this up?
Just like I called out Aliendo, I want to call out Keegan Thompson, who I think had a pretty darn nice season for Iowa. Struck out like the world. I don't have a strikeout rate in front of me, but he struck out so many players.
At one point, it was like 35%. Yeah.
And so the Cubs tendered him a contract last year and paid him some dough. And then he was on the 40-man roster, and then he was taken off the 40-man roster, I want to say in spring training, if I'm remembering right. And what happens there is then when he gets outrighted, he has the choice. He can become a free agent, or he can stay with the Cubs and keep the money that was tendered in that contract. And I think it made total sense for Keegan to take that money. I think there were only going to be minor league deals awaiting him on other teams. So, take the 7 figures and bank that for your family. He's now going to get an opportunity to go to another organization. There is no doubt in my mind that he will be somewhere else next year. And I think he's a guy that, I think Cub fans that really just follow the major leagues, they love Keegan Thompson. They have such an appreciation for the dog that he was in the majors. And, we also, as we watched him all the way through the minors, we had a way different relationship with him, where we had really high hopes that he was going to, over Justin Steele and thought of him as a real starting pitching prospect. And then, then when it was in the bullpen and he wasn't really getting strikeouts, it was there's no way this can continue, but it just did. And he's a guy that had a bunch of success in Chicago, and he's the type of guy that should be signing at CubsCon in 15, 20 years, and people should be excited to go get an autograph of Keegan's.
Yeah. Wild ride for Keegan Thompson. You're right. Yeah. It's I've mentioned it before on this podcast, but what we saw from him in Chicago was not even remotely the same pitcher that we saw from him in the years following in the minor leagues when he was drafted, right? He was when he was a starting pitcher in the minors coming up through the system, he was a 5-6 pitch pitcher, all kinds of different offerings, and he was mixing them well, and he was a low 90s fastball and pitch to contact guy, and then all of a sudden he comes up to the majors. They put him in a 1 to 2, sometimes getting into 3 inning role in the bullpen, and he was throwing mid 90s at some points. But he was fastball cutter slider mostly, and it wasn't even the same pitcher. It was like I hadn't watched him for the previous 3 seasons at all.
He really is the ultimate example of a guy that when the big lights turned on,
yes,
he rose to the occasion. I think when we talk about that in the future with different guys that come up, we're gonna always probably mention like Keegan Thompson instead.
You're exactly right. All right, man. Let's go ahead and wrap this episode up. Glad we can talk about wrapping up all these 3 seasons. Like I said, we still got Iowa to go this last week, but fun season. We'll probably kind of recap the season and our overall thoughts at some point here. Not this episode, maybe next one or sometime later. But kind of a wild ride of a season. I'm glad that we could recap it here. You want to go ahead and plug yourself?
Yeah. I am at Cub Prospects on Twitter, and still have the Substack that I'm. It's been less than regular lately. Real life getting in the way, but playoffs are coming. I will be in Wrigley for a bunch of playoff games, and we'll definitely be writing about it on the Substack. 5 Cubs things.
And you can find me on social media at Out of the Vines on Twitter, Blue Sky, all that good stuff. Check out the 1060 West Discord channel. You can find me over on the Prospect channel, Brian over on the Prospect. I think, Brian, you're over on other channels as well. I pretty much just live on the Prospect channel for the most part. If you're looking for an invite to that, send Brian a note and he will hook you up. In the meantime, we will be back in your ears in one short week to do our annual award show. Thanks, guys.
Go Cubs.